This is the Gorge. This is a podcast where my friend Sara and I gorge ourselves on overanalyzing a game or game-related topic. This week, we are both really bummed out because we both got stood up for Valentine's Day.
That's some old-fashioned bullshit. How do you get to be that point? I mean, I'm already like 700% forever alone, you know what I mean? And so, like, it's bad enough that my only company on Valentine's Day was my dogs. And then a video game had the audacity to stand my ass up, like, as well. Like, fuck you, Persona 5. Eat my ass.
So we were going to, when we first were, like, setting up the schedule months and months ago, we were gonna be like, oh boy, Persona 4 or 5 is coming out. We'll spend this weekend before it talking about how hype we are for Persona 5. Oh no, where did it go? Why?
No, my P5! I've waited so long for you, and I have to wait a little bit longer. It's the worst. It's the worst.
It is. It's terrible.
What was the original release date, Benjamin? 2014?
It was. I think it was July 2014. Let me pull it up right now.
Wow. You know, I never really expected it to come out in July of 2014. Like, even when that first You Are a Slave, One Emancipation trailer came out, I honestly, like, because I'm so used to the bullshit, and that's kind of what this whole thing is about today. I'm so used to, like, the bullshit, I honest to God thought the July 2014 was telling me, like, hey, that's when the next trailer is coming out. You know, like, I was just ready for it at that point. I was like, okay. That's when I can actually expect real news from Persona 5, not just a fucking teaser, you know, shit.
Yeah. So we are talking about games in general that, and sort of like the downside of what happens when a game gets delayed for whatever reason for such a long period of time that it becomes notable. Yeah. It's as games get bigger and bigger, and as technology continues to evolve and we get more options, the odds of a game being delayed in general approach 1 to 1.
It's kind of like if your game doesn't get delayed, like, is it broken?
Yeah, and that's fine. You know, shit happens, especially with a medium like this that depends on, at this point, the average, studio developed game has at least hundreds of people putting their hands on it.
I mean, it has all these. You're working with modern video games these days has so many like moving parts on their insides. Like so many different things to kind of keep track of inside of its little brain. That like eventually something's gonna get fucked up.
Yeah, it's something is not going to fail, or like our mechanic just doesn't work anymore. So and that's understandable. Shit happens, and I was thinking about it. I think delays. It's a twofold problem with delays, and the overall like cause of it is, for one thing, it's games are getting bigger and more elaborate, and more hands are working on it. There's more opportunities to fuck up, but there's also the growth of communication technology is also hindering that, because people will more like before the age of the internet, before forums and streaming and YouTube. You had to wait for a magazine to tell you that a game was coming out.
Wild times, weren't they?
Yeah. So like there was no impetus to get a rush on announcing your game, because you couldn't take full control of it. You had to wait for a magazine release or some kind of written text to print out and get mailed to people. So, but now that you can just immediately go on Twitter and announce a game and have it be seen within 5 minutes by hundreds of thousands of people, there's no reason to delay your announcement. Just say you're making a game and it'll be ready when it's ready.
It's a and I feel like also kind of in that same vein, like back in the day, video games took way longer to come out. I mean, kinda. How to put this? video games, like, the pieces between your average installation, like Tales games, because we've been talking about that a lot. The time between releases for those games was a lot longer back in the day, because that was just kind of the way things were. It took a few times, that's just, you didn't have a constant finger on the pulse of, like, the game being developed. You weren't always getting trailers for character announcements or whatever. You were just relying on magazines, and it was kind of like, well, you accepted the fact that video games didn't take that long. And now it kind of feels like devs are announcing games before they're really ready to be announced.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like, that's absolutely happening more and more, and we're seeing it a lot with, like, especially with AAA games or games coming from big studios, will announce it years before they actually should have announced
Andromeda.
it. Yeah, Mass Effect Andromeda. Kingdom Hearts 3, Final Fantasy 15.
A game that I think one of the saddest YouTube comments YouTube comments are generally like a bastion of sadness in the vast, wasteland of the internet. But probably the saddest YouTube comment I've ever seen, number one saddest YouTube comment ever, is somebody commenting on a Final Fantasy, back when it was called Versus 13, a Final Fantasy Versus 13 trailer with, I bought a PS3 for this game.
Yeah.
That's sad.
That's, what other better way to put it than that? The Last Guardian.
Oh my god, The Last Guardian. And that was a game that just...
Now...
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I want to, I also want to additionally clarify, we've done Bummercast before where we talked about games that failed to meet the hype, or talked about games that we just absolutely despise. This, I don't really consider this a Bummercast, because having a game that is delayed is not a guarantee your game will be bad.
It's not a guarantee your game will be good, either.
Yeah, it's not. Every game's development cycle has a bell curve to it, and that is either you spend too much time, or too little time, enough time, or too much time.
That enough time is it's such a tiny little margin. It's really hard to just spend enough time on a game. Especially these days in the age of actually, post-release patches and stuff. Devs don't really ever spend I don't feel like devs spend enough time on games anymore. But I'm too old-fashioned.
No, I don't.
I think you and I are the old breed of people where we're like, no, if a game comes out, it should just work,
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I even I get mad at PS4 installation times because I want it now. I want it now. I bought the game. I want to put it in.
I want it to just play.
Yeah.
Again, hey, go play Tales of Berseria because it plays right out of the fucking box. What the fuck? I've never been more. Honestly, that was one of the most surprising things about this game, which we'll talk about later. But yeah,
and but it's one of those things where it's not something that it's an inevitability. It's not something they control because again, games are getting so much bigger now that you
can't load the whole thing from a disc.
Yeah, you can't, and that's why I'm really glad the Switch is going to cartridges again. Speaking of bell curves, I always think that's such a weird transition. Right? That we had cartridges for years, and they were like, no, disc-based formula is the more reliable, more consistent, and you can fit more on a smaller medium. And now we are again at the point where cartridges have taken over because you can fit more data on a cartridge now than you can on a regular CD.
It's insane to me that we're kind of back here again. Everything is cyclical. And we're back at cartridges and little plastic squares holding your games instead of a disc, because discs were such a big deal when I was a kid, and now I'm an old woman, and it's like, oh well, the Switch is going back to cartridges. Oh well, what fucking year is it?
Yeah, well, and what does this mean? Is the PS5 going to be cartridge based?
I mean, honestly, if anybody would be cartridge based, it would be the PS5, because Sony makes their own proprietary memory sticks. Yeah,
memory.
like they have their own, like, if anybody could do it in a cost-saving way, it would be Sony. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the PS5 had cartridges or memory sticks or what the fuck ever, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's like a good 4 or 5 years down the line.
At the rate we're going.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking. We're talking about game delays.
No, we are. And so I have heard a list of just basically their delay or cancellation horror stories.
The best.
Because, woo boy, some of these are rough. Now, unfortunately, we already kind of hit two of them that I think were the worst, which was Duke Nukem Forever and Mighty Number 9, which got slammed with delays over and over again, and then just came out and were garbage.
But Duke Nukem Forever is such a special kind of shit. And I have such a dislike for that character and like all those archetypes that kind of surround it, that it's kind of like I'll never really get tired of making fun of it and Gearbox and Randy Pitchford as long as I live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially Randy Pitchford. I love making fun of him. He's like the toolbox of video game people, and it makes sense that his company is called Gearbox. Because he's just a massive tool. And that's another thing. We'll talk about another tool in just a second when it comes to game delays. I love it. I mean, you know, I have a Schadenfreude, you know what I mean?
Why don't we just start with that one then? Because I'm really eager to hear your input on this, because this is one that kind of like I more or less completely avoided. I heard like a little bit about it, like just like I kind of watched from afar as the kingdom crumbled.
Too Human. Too Human is what we're talking about. Too Human was kind of like my first real exposure to the often delayed curse. You know what I mean? It's kind of it's what falls upon a lot of games that have been delayed a lot, is that they go through tons and tons of development iterations. Nobody can really decide what this game is supposed to be. There's a lot of really huge promises. The lead developer is a huge asshole in most cases. This kind of sounds like I'm talking about Fable, which I think was also delayed, but wasn't bad. It was just really, really unimpressive. But we're talking about Too Human, which was like, what was that? That's Silicon Knights, which are the people who are responsible for the Legacy of Kain games. Shit. What else did they make? They made Eternal Darkness, which is such a fucking shame. Randy Pitchford was the lead, was I think the game director for Eternal Dark. Not Randy Pitchford, fucking shit. Dennis Dyack. That's his name. Dennis Dyack is a Norwegian developer who is a complete asshole. He's a if you need to know anything, Breitbart.com is a big fan of his, so there you go.
So there we are.
He's one of those. There was allegations for a game that came out after Too Human, that he had like severely mistreated workers and stuff like that. So like I love seeing Dennis Dyack get dragged through the mud. He's like one of my favorite like video game personality punching bags, villains for sure. And like the whole time Too Human was in development, it was like I said, my first kind of major like. I knew from the start, and I was a young kid, you know, when this game kind of got announced. I knew from the...
Which would have been 1998. It went in... 99. It went into development, originally for the Sony PlayStation.
When did it eventually come out? Because if you've got it up on...
It came out in 2008 on the Xbox 360. It went through development on all three platforms.
And eventually... I remember when it was originally... They were talking about it coming out for the Xbox. So, like, Too Human, to put this in perspective, Too Human was in development for the entire time I was in high school. So I actually kind of followed the Too Human shit show literally through high school. Just out of, like, curiosity. Because, like, even when when I first started really hearing the rumblings of Too Human, in, like, the back of my brain, I was like, ooh, this game's gonna be shit. Yeah! You know? I was, like, ready for it. And Dennis Dyack is just an asshole, and he's like Peter Molyneux without any of Peter Molyneux's, like, likable, eccentric qualities. He's just kind of a jerk. So he overpromises the way Molyneux does, but he has none of, like, his, like, the quirks that make him an interesting person to be around, you know? Like, Molyneux's a nice guy.
Like, he feels like he feels like sleazy, whereas Peter Molyneux just feels like really, really excited to tell you about his fun idea.
Peter Molyneux is that nice, crazy guy at the park. You know what I mean? And Dennis Dyack is just the douchebag at the bar.
He's like Peter Molyneux is kind of in a way like the Rob Liefeld of the industry, where his work seems to always disappoint, but he's a nice guy.
You can't like really hate Liefeld, kind of the way you can't hate Molyneux, but I can hate Dennis Dyack, because he is an asshole.
So what is Too Human?
Too Human is a third-person action-adventure game about, like, cybernetic Norse gods, and, like, the main dude is, like, not as cybernetic as other gods, and that's...
Which, right away, already feels like it came out for the PlayStation.
It's so... Something about everything about it is just so dated. And it was supposed to be like a trilogy, I think, and it was supposed to be like it was gonna change storytelling in games, and you know, all this stupid bullshit, and Dennis Dyack's making these huge promises, and then the game came out, and I mean, like, it's not, like, in retrospect, it's not the worst game that's ever made, but it's just not good. It's just, it handles like garbage, because it has this weird 2 thumbstick control scheme where you're like
where your attacks were mapped to the analog stick, weren't they?
Well, let me think. They were mapped to the right thumbstick. Yeah.
Yeah, so like you would attack by moving the stick, which is something that no game has ever done, and for good reason, because it's
a
dumb.
Horrible idea. I mean, it's just like the worst. It is so. I told you I played it like 2 years after it came out because I was working at GameStop and I could get games for free, you know. And so I gave it a shot. I played it for like an hour and was like, no, this is not worth my time. It's bad.
No, wait a minute. So you did get your hands on it. So this would probably be a simple question to answer. If the right analog stick is for attacking, I'm almost scared to ask, how do you move the camera?
You know, I don't remember, but I think the answer was poorly. If I recall correctly,
that feels right.
Correctly, the answer is very, very poorly. Just cause, like, it was just so mediocre. I mean, that's almost worse than bad in the case of a game like this.
Oh, absolutely. Like, flashing back to it, like, that was the biggest problem with Duke Nukem Forever, is that it was just an okay shooter.
Mediocre. It wasn't great. It wasn't so bad that it's funny. It's just kind of like, oh. You spent all this time, like 10 years of development, and this is what you gave us?
10 years and 3 console generations.
This is what we got.
And you still couldn't nail it.
You still couldn't make it either like a total glorious shit show that would go down in history, right? Or you couldn't make it as good as you fucking promised. You couldn't make another fucking, Eternal Darkness, which is an actual good video game.
Yeah. Or you know what they also made? They also did the GameCube port of Metal Gear Solid. They did
really
Twin Snakes.
Really good.
This studio was a really good studio. Maybe I should say is. Maybe I should say was.
Still exist?
Let me check.
I think they still exist.
Diag left form precursor stayed the case. Bankruptcy in 2014. Nope,
they
they're
only
dead.
died recently though. I expected them to have died much, much longer ago.
Oh, I know what killed them. They put out X-Men Destiny. That is what did it.
Destiny, another game that's just like, why? We could do a whole podcast about bad comic book video games, though.
I would be 110%.
I wouldn't know anything about what was going on, but I would.
I've played some shit before.
I would actually seek a bunch of the games if you told me a list of like really shitty comic book games, I would seek them out and play them for sure. So
awesome. All right, well we can probably we'll set that up. I'll put that on the list
because I love a good bad game. You know what I mean? Like, I love a
yeah.
good bad video game just to kind of like sink your teeth into. But we're talking about delayed games.
About late games, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
Too Human, man.
So that's kind of like the example I have of just
although
like...
that reminds me, one other like awesome like moment of masochism is because not masochism, the other one, sadism.
Sadism?
Is that like how much I fucking like Dennis Dyack is an asshole, and he's an asshole who's kind of like Donald Trump because he loves to talk shit about the video game press, and then he put out a bad video game, and I swear to God, like, you could, the day Too Human came out, I could hear the choir of angels as people played their review copies. You know what I mean? You could just smell it, like blood in the water. You know, like all the old games, Kotaku and Joystick and all those old games. I don't even know if Joystick still exists anymore. But back in the day, like, you could smell the blood in the water. People are just like, Too Human ain't fucking good.
It feels like, for one thing, there'd be, like, the sigh of relief that it's bad.
I know, right?
And also, I can, just from, like, hearing about him, I don't know his exact reaction, but I feel like he probably had the exact same reaction that Phil Fish had in regards to Fez. Which is, when the reviews for Fez came in and people said, it's alright, where he flipped his shit and said, no, you are all wrong. I am the smart one. It's me. I made the
sure
good
that's
game.
What happened with Dennis Dyack. I want to believe.
My favorite thing ever is Phil Fish made a tweet where he said like, Fez. He said, basically all he said was Fez 2 would have been amazing. Like, not in a way of like that wistfulness, like, oh man, if I had made the money off of Fez, I had really good ideas for Fez 2. It was in that, like, spiteful, like, no, you can't have my good game.
Why didn't you make a good fucking game in the first place, then, asshole?
I was gonna make the best game ever, but you guys were mean, so you can't have it. And we're like, home. No one liked Fez.
Really?
He was like, but no one liked Fez, so whatever.
It's fine. Nobody gives a shit, dude. Yeah. Alright? Have a nice day.
Now, that all being said about Too Human, how could you spend this long and fuck it up? That's not, again, like we said, it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee your game could be bad, but it is a guarantee that your game will have some misses. And I think, now, these next two ones I'm just gonna kind of combine because you and I have both not actually gotten our hands on them. But I've read enough reviews and I've seen enough about each of them. I've seen enough videos and stuff that I can feel pretty confident in at least saying the little bit I have, which is when your game is delayed for that long, The Last Guardian, Final Fantasy 15, there's a quirk to it that you can feel how dated it is, not in the sense of like the actual quality of the gameplay, but in like the way certain games play. Like, the most obvious example I can think of is your most generic PS1 era like platformer had tank controls because it didn't have an analog stick, where it had like floating pickups that spun, and it had a bunch of like just 2D sprites that always faced the camera, so it looked like a 3D object. Yeah. You know, for fire effects and stuff. Like, that's like a play style that's exclusive to that specific time frame of like the mid to late 90s before the PS2 came out. And so the fact is that like games like The Last Guardian or Final Fantasy 15, not saying they're bad games because they're getting positive reviews, but there's that like 5 to 10 year old like aura to them.
Honest to God, everything I've seen of The Last Guardian, I don't want to like project on anybody having not actually played the game, but I'm gonna do it a little bit. I honest to God think people just really want The Last Guardian to be good, and that's why it's reviewing better than it should be. Because, like, and I understand, because, like, Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, especially Ico, even more so than Shadow of the Colossus, represent such a huge portion of, like, my fond video game memories, and like, the idea of a video game having, like, a real atmosphere. Ico was the first game I ever played. I can say with certainty it had, like, it was atmospheric. It didn't have, like, a real strong plot. You were just there for the atmosphere.
When you say games are art, the first game that comes to mind for everyone is Ico.
So, like, and I feel because game reviewers are all, like, my age.
And you don't...
Yeah.
And you don't want to be the one who's, like... You don't want to be the guy who gives God Hand a 3, you know?
Yeah. Nobody wants to be that guy.
Like, you don't want to be, like... You want to play The Last Guard, and you're like, well, its controls are kind of jank, and it doesn't quite look as good as it could, and... There's some collision
and the AI
issues.
for the thing, Trico, is not great.
Yeah. So, but do you want to be the one that gives The Last Guardian a 5?
Like, nobody wants to go down in history as that asshole, you know? Because it's like, everything I've seen, like, from the outside looking in is like, it's just not that good of a game.
It's not. Yeah, everything I've seen, like, all of the glitch compilations of, you know, clipping through the world, or the Trico failing to catch you, or pathing just going completely bonkers. And it's like, guys, you made Shadow of the Colossus.
Especially Trico's pathing being such an issue, because, like, Yorda's pathing in Ico wasn't great, but it worked. Like, you know, sometimes it took her a minute to respond to you, but ultimately Yorda worked.
And you know what? I think part of the issue with that is that when Yorda fails to correctly respond, it really adds to the atmosphere of the game, because you are two people who don't quite know each other.
Same language.
And yeah, she can't speak to you. You can't communicate with each other effectively. So when you call to her, she might not react right away because she's still unsure about where she is, or who you are, or what's going on, and you can't tell her what you need. So there's kind of an atmospheric approach to that, whereas in The Last Guardian, it feels way more like bad programming. You know? Like, there's a difference between sort of happenstance, you know, mechanic that kind of goes a little awry but ends up working out in the end for the developers. They're like, oh, this actually adds to it. And there's this pathing
and
doesn't
I mean,
work.
let's be honest for just a minute here. There are two generations separating Ico and The Last Guardian.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So there really isn't an excuse for that. And I'm sure that there are a lot of good merits, and I'm sure it's a very atmospheric game, and I'm sure there's a lot of breadth to it and depth that's going on, but mechanically it does not meet the most basic qualifications, and that's a shame, because again, you don't want to be the guy that gives The Last Guardian a bad review.
But it's like, modern games kind of have a certain level of standards that you kind of need to meet. Just to kind of get you there, you know, to just get you a 7, you need to meet, like, a certain general standard of quality that everything I've seen of The Last Guardian, it just doesn't meet. Very simple, basic, as beautiful as it is, you know, it just doesn't meet certain quality standards. And that's a shame. And, you know, like, because I was excited. I mean, I love Ico and Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah. They're both incredible, like, breathtaking games, and they have such a quality to them that, like, they're a game that not only do you want to recommend it to someone, you want to be there while they're playing it 100%. For the first time. You know?
And God, it's just such a shame to have the last, because, like, after this game, let's be honest for a minute, Team Ico is probably done.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have the team size or the clout in the industry. They aren't, like, Team Ico, I can kind of compare them to Platinum, which Platinum for a while was like, they were a mark of quality, and that's, well, put it like this way, you hire Platinum to make a game, to make a when you can afford to make a game that won't sell a lot. So that's when you hire Platinum to be like, okay, we'll make this cool character action game. We know it's not going to do gangbusters, but we have a cool concept we want to get out. And then we'll hire Platinum to do that. Whereas Team Ico, this is their third game. Ever.
Yeah. And it took that long for it to come out, and for it only to not be as mind-blowing as the first two is really a shame.
It's very disheartening, and I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of talented people at that studio, and I hope, if they do end up falling through, I mean, I hope another company snatches them up, because it'd be a shame for that talent to go to waste.
Team Ico is a branch of Sony Games. So when Team Ico is dissolved, the likelihood is they'll all just be redistributed to other teams inside Sony. But it's still just a shame to have, the third game by a pretty illustrious, development team just fall so flat. And I think that's kind of the biggest problem with these really, really delayed games, not just, Final Fantasy 15, Kingdom Hearts 3, Persona 4 or Persona 5, as a 2 human, and Half-Life 3, is that there was really no way any of these games could ever live up to the hype.
Yeah, because that is one of the biggest downfalls of having your game go in development for too long, is that you're giving the audience way too much time to think about what the game could be. Sure.
And when you have that much time in development, the general thought for most normal people is, well, they spent 12 years making this game, it has to be awesome, right? And then you play it and you're like, oh, never mind. There's no way it could ever live up to the hype of 12 years of development. That's the entire time some people are in school. That's their entire, primary school education from kindergarten to graduating is the development cycle for some of these games. And it's there's no way. There's literally no way, because people assume you spent that much time on it, it has to be good, and then they actually play it and they're like, oh, never mind. And so even if the game is serviceable, by all accounts, The Last Guardian is serviceable. But even if the game is just serviceable, then that's not good enough, for having spent that much time in development. It's just not good enough.
Exactly. And now, one of the other things I think about is, especially for 15 and for Persona 5, is, Persona 5 it was announced, the release date was for 2014. I think it was announced in 2013, wasn't it?
Something like that. So we're pushing 5 years now.
And Versus 13 was announced during the...
It was announced concurrently with 13. They were announced side by side because they were all supposed to be part of the
same timeline.
It's called the Fabula Nova Crystallis world, kind of the
who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck about anything in 13? My point is the game that they what they thought Versus 13 was going to be, and what they predicted Persona 5 in 2014 would be, are absolutely not the games we got today. No, they went through massive changes to get where they are today, or else they wouldn't have been delayed this much.
I think in 10 years, I want, and I know it'll happen, because it's such a juicy story. It has to happen. In 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a fascinating documentary about Final Fantasy 15.
Oh yeah, no, I will, and I will watch that thing with rapt attention, because I want to know. Because you remember seeing the original shots.
They removed an entire character. They removed Stella. Stella is just gone. Luna and Stella are not the same person, which is just mind blowing.
All of the characters went through massive redesigns and shifts and changes. Aesthetic designs, because and so and we didn't get any solid gameplay trailers for a long time, so I'm wondering what was this game what was the original when they showed off that first trailer, what did the design document look like for that game?
I remember it really clearly because I thought I was kind of like rolling my eyes, and at the same time I was kind of interested. It was either Nomura or Tabata, and I think it was Nomura because he used to be on the Versus 13 team and he left to keep working on Kingdom Hearts. But he said they were setting out to make a Final Fantasy game that would just make you cry. It was supposed to be like Final Fantasy Versus 13 was supposed to be like a great tragedy, like a Shakespearean tragedy. And ultimately the game we got in Final Fantasy 15 is not that game. It has like its tragic moments for sure, knowing what I know about the game, but it's not like the grand tragedy of that Versus 13 promised to be. Like, Versus 13 was, by all accounts, supposed to be this massive Shakespearean tragedy. With, like, flawed heroes in the wrong place at the wrong time kind of shit. And, a really doomed love story between Noctis and Stella. And it just, none of that really materialized. And I want to know what happened.
No, it didn't. Yeah, I want to know what Versus 13 was going to be. And what happened to make it become 15?
So, one of my favorite things, speaking of that, if you go out and you Google it, a few weeks after 15 came out and people had finally gotten around to beating the game, before the game came out, somebody went on 4chan and they said they had worked on the game and they were talking about all of these crazy changes that happened and all of this stuff, like all of the chaos that was in the development, and nobody believed them until the game actually came out. And then everybody realized this one rando on 4chan had been like super, super right, and people realized, holy shit, we were actually talking to a real developer for Final Fantasy 15. And if you just go read the changes that happened, these are like massive changes. These are like huge shifts in the storyline. Character motivations, people being completely removed, the tone of the story, the villains, things like that are just altered and changed. And I'm just like, I want to know how things got so off rails.
It feels a lot like we got to see the transition from what Infinite was to BioShock Infinite. You know, we got to see that happen via trailers in real time. We didn't get that level of like watching it shift from 15, so like it's this big developmental mystery, and I really
like there's a huge gap in time of like the first trailer happened and then there was like radio silence for a long time, and then another trailer happened and it seemed like things had changed. The original trailer was just Noctis and Stella. And then, the original trailer was just Noctis being a badass, I think. And then there was a trailer with Noctis and Stella, and then there was a trailer showcasing Noctis and the Chocobros, as they're called. And then, like...
Which, I mean, I've seen enough of this thing, I still don't know their names or which one of them they are.
I have a Tumblr.
Yeah, but like even then I'm just like, wait a minute, I thought, which one are you? I know there's 4 of you, but which one is which? Which one is... Are you the chef? No, wait, which one? Okay. Alright, I'll play it and I'll find out eventually.
It's honestly kind of hard to keep up with it.
Yeah.
But, so it's, Noctis and the dudes, and then, like... But all of these little... And they're just tiny trailers. They're little snippets of stuff, and none of them are ever really gameplay.
Yeah.
And these would all happen after long, long periods of radio silence. And it was just kind of like, after a while, people were like, this game is vaporware. It's never coming out. You know?
Yeah, and then they just eventually
dropped a bomb.
It was 2013.
It was
2013.
The E3.
Where...
no, it wasn't the E3.
Yeah.
It was the one before that one. Where Tabata was like, we changed it from Final Fantasy Versus 13 to Final Fantasy 15. Hey!
Yep. It's not a spin-off. Like, so that's such a weird thing to think about, where like this game was changed in development so much that it stopped being a spin-off.
It stopped being part of that universe because they changed things so severely. I'm just super interested. If you look at... Okay, so back... I don't even know when. I want to say 2011, maybe 2012. They released it's a picture of the main cast of the game, and it's like 14 people. And And to this day, people look at it, and there are characters in that little lineup of 14 people that are not in Final Fantasy 15. And everybody's like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah.
You know, like, nobody knows who these people are. Like, it's, like, there's Stella, and there's some other girl, and nobody knows who that other girl is. Stella herself was removed and replaced with Luna. All sorts of crazy stuff like that. And I think Final Fantasy 15's development would make the most fascinating video game documentary ever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like 100%. I want to know the most. I want to know the conversation on the day they decided, no, it's going to be 15 now.
Oh, I know, right? Like,
that more than anything about 15, I want to know who was in the room and what they said that was like, okay, it's not 13 verses. It's at this point it's 15 from now on.
Like, at what point?
Yeah.
Like, when did that decision ultimately come down? Because, again, it was a bit of a it was a period of silence before the announcement from it being, verses 13 to 15. It had been a few years since we'd really heard anything. We were all just calling this game was never happening. And then they announced it, and then the game happened, and it was all, like, really kind of out of nowhere. Like, the game, suddenly, holy shit, Final Fantasy 15 is actually happening. And ultimately, on top of all of this, everything I've heard is that FF15 is not a bad game.
No, everything I've heard about it is that it's a fantastic game. Like, the gameplay it works. It's got a very big environment that's fun to explore. The story is compelling, and the characters are actually really interesting. They have a lot of depth and development to them. And so I'm just like, yeah, I mean, good that it came out and it's actually good, and I think part of that is because it doesn't feel like there were a lot of changing of hands or, changing of consoles or companies like Too Human or Duke Nukem Forever had. It all stayed within Square Enix.
It's just that Square Enix they could not make up their minds about where they wanted this game to go. I mean, they just couldn't. Yeah. I mean, and the crazy thing is now, with the amount of time that went into 15's development, and with the fact that now, since Kingdom Hearts is just on the horizon, Kingdom Hearts 3, as much as I joke, is probably either at the end of this year or the start of next year.
I'm going to give a Price is Right estimate, highest without going over. Summer 2018.
I'm gonna say March 2018. So like early 2018. And we'll see who's right. And if they announce it for now E3 is coming, and if they announce it for 2017, the whole world will explode.
Yeah. If that happens, you'll know, because everyone listening to this podcast right now will hear me screaming from wherever they are when that happens.
Yeah. And so
whatever we were going to talk about the week after E3, it'll just be a Kingdom Hearts cast again, because I will have nothing else on the brain.
But see, here's the thing though. With the amount of time 15 took, with the amount of time, with the general optimistic view being that Kingdom Hearts 3 is approaching the end of its development, as far as anybody knows, there is no new Final Fantasy title in development. There's that isn't the FF7 remake, which is a really bizarre place to be. Because the World of Final Fantasy came out. They put out a mobile game recently. 15's out. Kingdom Hearts is the next quote unquote Final Fantasy title. That's Oh no, you know what? I was about to say it's Square's next big title, but that's not true. Mm-hmm. That's not Square's next big title, because they're pumping out 3 Marvel games. Count. We're talking about the Final Fantasy division of
Yeah. But as far as Final Fantasy, as far as Nomura helmed titles or in that category, there isn't really.
It's such a strange thing to think of that right now. Everything I've read on the internet, all of the speculation that's going on, is that there is nothing currently in development for the Final Fantasy time like the Final Fantasy franchise, except for the 7 remake, which is super weird because it's a remake.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a mainline. It's an old game that's getting a massive facelift. But it's not 16. There are no plans, as far as anybody knows. Nope, 16 hasn't even really been written yet.
No, like, I've heard there's been literally no information about a potential 16, unless the remake turns into 16 somehow.
I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, at the rate Square is going, I wouldn't be shocked. But that means that we're 5 to 12 years away from another mainline
you have to put the end cap on it. The end cap is now 12 years.
5 to 12 years away from Final Fantasy 16. I'll be 40. If 16 takes as long to come out as 15 took, I'll be 40 years old when it comes out.
So it better be good, is what we're saying.
Is what I'm saying. Holy shit. But yeah, like, to me, I think FF15's like crazy development cycle. I want to play it just to kind of understand it better so that I can speak about it more expertly.
Yeah. It's definitely on the list. It's just we have a lot of other RPGs to play right now, and like playing a Final Fantasy is okay. So playing a Tales game is like 50 to 70 hours. Playing a Persona game is like 70 to 90 hours. Playing a Final Fantasy game is like 120 hours.
Especially because FF12, not 12, the other one, 15 is so comprehensive apparently that like it's huge. I mean, it's a big fucking game.
Yeah.
And yeah, holy shit. Hey, I hate to do this to you. We need to pause the podcast.
Okay, sure.
Really badly.
Okay, let's stop it. Yep. Okay, we're back.
Sorry. So yeah, basically it all boils down to Final Fantasy 15's development cycle is one of the more interesting things in the video game universe.
Yeah. And I wish we could know more about it. And I am really excited for the inevitable book and or documentary that will come out about this game.
Or at least like a really comprehensive, like, long form article, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of like like there's a really good one out there that you still need to read about the collapse of Lionhead.
Yeah, I gotta remember to email that to myself so I can read it at work when I have time.
Oh my god, because it's super long. It took me like 3 hours to get through. But it's really, really comprehensive, and I'm dying for the day we get something like that about Final Fantasy 15, for sure. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like, what else is there? What else is?
So there are also games that are still quote unquote in development, and there's not really a ton to say about these, because their story is still being told, I suppose.
Lame.
We already hit about how Kingdom Hearts 3, like, and I talked about this for the Kingdom Hearts podcast, where, like, yeah, they announced 3 way too early, and they should have announced it maybe in 2015, or 2014 even, would have been way more acceptable.
Yeah.
But not 4 years ago.
Yeah, Square Enix, I think Square Enix has a major problem, in that they have such, they make these little games, these little side games, and they come out really quickly. But they have a major time management problem that's going to sink them eventually, I feel like. It worked out. Final Fantasy 15 is the best-selling title in the series so far, until 7 Remake comes out. But it's eventually going to bite them in the ass.
Nomura can only put out so many compilations of Kingdom Hearts before the collective fan base gets too tired of it.
I mean, it's already kind of happening. I was on the JRPG subreddit today.
Okay, there you are.
Oh, hi. I was on the JRPG subreddit today, and it was talking about Berseria, and it was like, well, it was talking about Berseria's sales being pretty good for, JRPG in 2017. A non-Final Fantasy JRPG, I mean. And somebody was like, well, why aren't we talking about the sales for 2.8? And the general response was, like, nobody cares. I know you care, of course, but a lot of people, I mean, that's kind of, you hear it a lot these days. People are just kind of losing the hype. It's really hard to stay hyped when it's been this long for a game that's just never seems to appear,
and I guarantee, I mean, I fucking 100% guarantee 90% of it had to do with Final Fantasy 15 completely overshadowing every bit of Kingdom Hearts news that could ever come out. Because, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but I fucking do, because it was personal for me. It seemed like for every screenshot of KH3 we got, 15 got an anime.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, every time Nomura made a tweet about Kingdom Hearts 3, Final Fantasy 15 got another OVA and 3 books.
You're not wrong, though. But it's kind of like that's Square Enix's problem, is I don't think they have enough staff, frankly. Because it sounds like now that 15 is out, they can put development of Kingdom Hearts 3 into overdrive. They can finally start really...
Well, straight up, there was an announcement that was like, Nomura hurried up and finished all of the work he needed to do on 15 so that he could go work on Kingdom Hearts 3 now.
Yeah, and it's like...
So, like, straight up, he just wasn't working on it for a long time because he was too busy with Kingdom Hearts, with Final Fantasy 15.
And it's because I don't think Square Enix has enough staff. I mean, they just don't have enough people on the development staff to handle 2 huge, and I'm talking huge video games, you know? Like, most companies don't do that. Most companies don't have 2 massive titles like that in concurrent development running side by side.
Yeah, with at least don't do that with, like, the same staff.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, working on each of them.
Like, I mean, like, Bethesda is different because Bethesda falls under the ZeniMax Media corporate umbrella, you know, so Dishonored 2 was being developed at the same time as Prey and Fallout 4, but they're all by different companies, you know? Square Enix doesn't really have that.
And, like, I guarantee that, like, Nintendo's working on Breath of the Wild, and they're obviously working on Mario Odyssey at the same time. That's not the same staff working on both games.
I've honestly heard just from, like, you know, like the video game internet rumor mill, everybody at Nintendo is just working on Breath of the Wild right now. Like, as it approaches, I mean, March
as it's approaching release, of course they're working on it.
Like, everybody, but I mean, yeah, of course, like, you know, like, they have separate development teams, but, like, right now, everybody who's working on Mario Odyssey, or whatever the fuck else is coming out for the Switch, nobody is working on that right now. Everybody, because, I mean, like, honest to God, the success of the Switch, it lives and dies on how good Breath of the Wild is.
It kind of hinges on Breath of the Wild, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if Breath of the Wild is not good...
yeah, that's not going to be... no one's going to be happy if that happens.
Right, that's not a good thing.
But we'll find out in, like, a month or so.
Oh, God, no, it's, like, not even that far.
Well, by that time, we'll have to beat it, still.
Oh, yeah, you're right, okay.
That's what I mean.
I'll give you that, all right.
But more to the point, like... Yeah, and that's... So the release cycle for 3 is not nearly as bad as it is for other games, and it only feels worse is because we've been expecting 3 since 2 came out. But they haven't been working on 3 since 2 came out.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what their problem is that, you know, they built all these spin-off games, and they should have just been working on 3. But that's a personal thing, really, more so than anything.
The point is that, like, to round it out, like, there are also other games that have just been trapped indefinitely, and
never got out.
Some of them, like, it's hard to, like, list them off because, like, there's nothing to report on because they've just... I'm talking about Beyond Good and Evil 2. Okay, like,
you're just talking about Beyond Good and Evil 2.
I try to dance around it, but, like, no...
I don't think it's ever going to happen. But I think
they still say it's in development.
I think Ubisoft drags Beyond Good and Evil 2's bloated corpse out from their horrible basement every handful of years to remind them that they can still do, like, unique games instead of just, like, the same crap over and over again.
And then they make another Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a way
they don't make a sequel to Prince of Persia 08 instead.
And that's just a way for them to make shareholders happy. That's pretty much all it is. To, like, remind them that they still have this major hype game that people are still, you know, they have, like, their little indie game. It's not really indie, but I mean, it's pretty indie in comparison to other games. They have their indie platformer female protagonist game that, you know, everybody loves, and they can kind of say, like, oh yeah, we're still working on Beyond Good and Evil. They're not working on Beyond Good and Evil fucking 2.
There's no... There's a room in Ubisoft Studios for Beyond Good and Evil 2, and no one has been in there for 4 years.
No, there are cobwebs. Probably
not even the cleaner is allowed to go in there.
There's a dead body in there for sure. Mm-hmm. Like one guy was working on it to make that one trailer, and then that guy died in there, and they never bothered to clean it up. So yeah, it's not happening.
So that's like, those games that just like when they get trapped, there's nothing else to say about them besides like until the studio is like until they bite the bullet and say it's canceled.
Yeah.
All you're doing is just making yourselves more of a joke.
It's honestly like it's like a zombie game at this point. Like we all know it's dead. You're just waiting for somebody to shoot it in the head.
Yeah.
StarCraft Ghost was like that.
Yeah. Speaking of that, now on the other hand, there are also a handful of games that just got canned, and after building up the presentation, no. And StarCraft Ghost is probably one of the most sterling examples of here is a game that was going to come out. It was going to completely change, like everything.
Yeah, about the franchise
for that studio, like for that franchise, and now it's dead.
I just don't to this day. I don't understand why StarCraft Ghost didn't come out, because everything I saw of it was like, oh, this is a game with like stuff. It's got levels, and concepts, and designs.
Blizzard sees ideas through.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing. I don't like all of Blizzard's development decisions, but that's because I'm not an MMORPG player. I'm not. Blizzard's, as much as I love Overwatch as a concept, Blizzard's games don't typically appeal to me because they're just not my kind of games. It's not like anything's bad, like anything wrong with them. It's just not my kind of games. I'm not like a huge Diablo person. I didn't play Warcraft. I didn't play StarCraft. I sure the fuck avoided World of Warcraft. And I enjoy Overwatch from afar.
And like a lot of these games like will have long development cycles, like StarCraft 2 or stuff like that. But like I think Ghost is like the only game I can think of that actually just straight up got canceled after some significant development from that studio. And that's just so weird because they not only did they cancel it, it was far enough along that that the events of StarCraft Ghost are canon.
What?
Nova is in StarCraft 2.
That's so weird.
And she talks about like the adventures she went on between StarCraft 1 and 2, which were going to be Ghost.
That is so bizarre.
Yeah.
To have a game that doesn't exist anymore be canon is just such a strange idea. And
so not only that, to have it be canon, and not only that, but far enough along in development that you can reference the events and have the audience understand them because they've seen enough trailers and demos and heard enough storylines so that they can relate, they can recognize what was going on.
So weird.
It's in a way, it's kind of like how New Vegas folded a lot of Van Buren into it.
Yeah.
But more so in a way that it felt like we're just recycling these ideas we had for the failed game into this new one. And this is more like this game we straight up canceled is still canon.
It's just you'll never really know what happened in it. It's so weird.
She's in Heroes of the Storm for crying out loud.
Van Buren is not canon. Van Buren is non-canon. As cool as some of the concepts in Van Buren are, Van Buren is non-canon.
No, it's not. It's not canon. They just recycled a lot of the idea, the concept and the ideas, into Fallout New Vegas.
Exactly, but nobody would ever say the stuff that happened in Van Buren is canon, and Fallout 4 would never make references to Van Buren. It'll make references to New Vegas for sure, but it'll never make references to Van Buren because Van Buren doesn't fucking count. Meanwhile, StarCraft 2 makes Ghost references for a game that nobody can literally ever play.
I know.
So wild, right?
A lot of the games we've talked about in this episode are such weird divergence from what you'd expect from the norm.
Yeah.
That they're worth talking about on that merit alone. I can't think of any other situation like this where the canceled game still counts and its protagonist shows up
in other media.
In another game.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. Like, to me, that's just like what the fuck? Like, I think that is the one unifying factor among all of these games. Too Human, Beyond Good and Evil 2, FF15, and, you know, The Last Guardian, is that everything about their development is just strange.
Yeah,
you know?
It's so weird.
It's odd. They change hands a lot. Ideas are brought up and then developed. Levels are built around it, and then they're discarded.
And then new technology comes out that makes it obsolete.
Yeah. Speaking of the 4chan poster, who was talking about like 15's development, they were talking about how they had like whole levels made, and then they were told to discard them because they wouldn't fit in the new 15, you know? Like, the new ideas for 15. It was apparently a very demoralizing thing to have happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, imagine dragging 5 months of work into the recycling bin.
Yeah, as a graphic designer, honestly, nobody understands that better. You know, nobody understands the pain of being told, yeah, scrap that whole cool idea for something different entirely. Better. So, like, yeah, to me, that's, like, the unifying factor of all of these games is the fact that just... And that's probably what makes them take so long, if you think about it, is that their development cycles are abnormal. They're not what happens.
Yeah.
They're not what typically happens in a game's development cycle, and that's what makes them take so long. And it's what leads to cancellations. It's what makes them bad. In some cases.
You know what? That actually reminded me. There was other one I didn't talk about. It's not on the list, but I wanted to talk about it because speaking of like horrible outside circumstances that can affect this, you know. Mm-hmm. Like, some games have, like, a shift in consoles that cause it to, you know, be scrapped or completely redone.
Yeah.
Or it changes hands, or studios go bankrupt in the middle of developing a game or something like that.
Yeah.
One of the saddest, like, most bummer things ever.
Oh boy.
And this is one of those situations where it's not like a studio's incompetency, or it's not like the business, the suits, you know, Johnny CEO was like, I don't know these beep boops. What are you doing? And cancels the project or whatever. The Homestuck Kickstarter game.
Oh man, that is some old-fashioned bullshit, isn't it?
No, that had one, like, my fucking heart goes out to everyone that got hit by that.
Except for the assholes who stole that money, of course.
Oh yeah, for those of you who don't know, so Homestuck is probably Homestuck will be in history books.
Yeah.
Like, the cultural impact that Homestuck had on the storytelling medium is something worth noting, and if you haven't heard of it, you're very lucky.
You've been under a rock for the last 6 or 7
Or
years.
I can say that you have heard of Homestuck, you just aren't aware it was a Homestuck reference.
You're probably right. Right.
I think Homestuck has more words in it than it has the highest word count of any contemporary Western literature.
That does not surprise me
in history.
I mean, he's the writer is a crazy person. What's his name?
Yeah, Andrew Hussey.
Hussey, there we go.
He's a genius.
Hussey's
the point
is,
in 2011.
Has it really been that long?
Or 2010, maybe.
It has not been that
still.
long.
The Kickstarter said the game was going to come out in Christmas 2012. Wait. Let me check. I'm just going to make sure because it's either 12 or 14, but either way, that's really bad.
Wow. It's been that long. Holy shit.
And I would know that because I backed it.
Oh, how much did you back? Can I ask how much you put in?
$120.
Wow. Wow, that blew.
I was really excited for this. I'm still excited for this, but
it's just never going to happen.
Well, let me just... frick. Estimated delivery December 2012.
Wow. Wow.
That was for the stuff I get, like the bonus orders I get, which means the Kickstarter had to start either early 2012 or middle of 2011. The point is, Andrew Hussey creates a cultural phenomenon, and partway through developing it, he wants to make his own game based on the story. So he starts a Kickstarter. He gets $2.5 million out of $700,000.
Wow, good for
24,346 backers, which kind of averages out to about $1,000 per person.
Wow, that means, but you only donated 120. That means that there are some people out there donating like thousands of dollars.
Actually, wait a minute. No, that's not right. Let me do some math here. I want to make sure my numbers here because I think it's even better than that.
Oh no. I remember that the $10,000 donation mark was you got to have your character appear in Homestuck and then be immediately killed off.
Okay, I was completely off on that. It's about $100 per person.
Okay,
sorry, my bad.
Okay.
Whatever. Still, that's still a significant amount of money per person.
Yeah, it is.
To throw down. Because again, like you said, at least 2 people donated $10,000.
Right, to have their characters immediately killed off in the thing. Yeah.
Now, so he gave his money or he gave the Kickstarter money to help build the game because he doesn't know how to build the game, so he hired a studio to do it.
Right.
They were, I'm going to throw them under the bus because they deserve it.
They're fucking assholes.
They are the guys behind
King's Quest 4.
King's Quest. No, it wasn't 4. I think it was like is it 7?
No, it was not. Wait, if it was not 4, it's 9.
I think it's just King's Quest. Yeah, it was King's Quest.
Okay.
The Odd Gentleman did it.
Yeah.
He gave the money to the Odd Gentleman. And so they were hired to work on the game, and eventually it turns out that they took the money that were given to them for the Homestuck Kickstarter game and used it to make King's Quest instead.
Motherfuckers.
They stole the money that was given to them given to Hussey by fans. And then Hussey gave it to them, and they took it and did not make the game he wanted to make. This happened around 2015, which is all over 3 years after development started.
Did Hussey ever sue them? Could he?
I don't know what the legality of it was.
I hope he could. I mean, honestly, if anybody... I have a friend on Facebook who plays those fucking games, and every time I see her post about it, I'm just like fighting the urge to be like, those motherfuckers stole $2.5 million from Andrew Hussey, and I don't even read Homestuck, and that pisses me off. No,
and it's like... And so... When you first read about it, you're like, oh my god, Andrew Hussey is actually a scumbag, and he embezzled he took the money and ran.
No.
And then you find out that, no, this dude who was still working on Homestuck at the time now has to find a new studio and find some way to raise money, and because of that, he had to take like an entire year off of writing Homestuck.
And that's why it was on hiatus for so long.
Yeah, that's why it was on hiatus for so long. And so... It's back on production with a new team, and we've seen some gameplay stuff for it, and it looks like it's on track again. But who knows when it's going to come out now?
That's such a fucking bummer. Like, poor Hussey, right?
I know.
Like the fucking idiots. It just makes me so angry. I hope he can sue them and just shut them down.
Yeah,
because
I
need to Google that when we get done here because
I don't know what it ended up happening, but. I mean, on a positive note, like, the Homestuck fandom is pretty terrible, but they are some of the most artistic motherfuckers out there.
Right?
So, like, I'm sure he could very easily put a team together to help him work on it.
Right.
But still, man, it's just...
It's bullshit.
How scumbaggy do you have to be to take a Kickstarter funds... and use it to make a completely separate game.
Make your own shitty game and
think like you can get away with that and not be caught on that.
It's such bullshit. That's such a scumbag move. That's so infuriating. Like, fuck those guys. You know, like, fuck every single one of them. And I don't even read or really particularly. I'm not really invested in Homestuck. But just like as an artistic person, I'm like, that's some old-fashioned bullshit. And if somebody did it to me, I'd probably burn their house down. So like
the amount of like genuine care and appreciation Hussey puts into that series, and to have that happen to him when straight up all he wanted to do was make more of it for his fans, you know.
Like, the fact that Andrew Hussey didn't burn their studios down is an incredible thing, because I would have. And I wouldn't have even thought twice about it.
The integrity he had to have had to not be like, well, new Kickstarter, here we go.
Right?
Like, to instead, like, try to pay it out himself or whatever he ended up doing. Like, I know for a fact he didn't open up a new Kickstarter, which is what a lot of studios would have done.
Yeah.
So,
like,
yeah, so that's just, like, that's one of those examples where it's like...
Does Hussey have a Patreon?
I don't know what he's doing right now besides working full-time on the game.
That's so insane. Like, that's so insane to me. I mean, you think Andrew Hussey, of all people, would have a Patreon. If Tracy Butler from Lackadaisy, who still only puts out a page a month, has a $9,000, however much the fuck it is, Patreon, Andrew Hussey should have a fucking Patreon. He should just roll around in that money every single week. You know what I mean? The guy who does a Fox in Space all by himself. That fucking guy in his trailer in the middle of the desert or wherever the fuck he lives. I've, like, built up such a, like, mystique around the Fox in Space guy that I actually don't want to know anything about him.
I know, right?
Like, I just think of him now as, like, some sort of crazy art mystic who works out of a fucking caravan. You know, like a Winnebago in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And he just, like, smokes a lot of weed and works on a Fox in Space all day. Yep. And he's, like, transcended into some sort of crazy art shaman. You know, like, I don't want to know anything about this guy, because it would just ruin the mystique of a Fox in Space.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, don't ruin a Fox in Space for me, man, okay?
Well, speaking of that, we can kind of hit these last few ones pretty quickly.
These are just segue.
Yeah, that's a really good segue, actually. These are kind of like, I have 3 games that just got, like, straight up canceled. Like, they're done and over with. And the first one is Star Fox 2, which got canceled when it was done.
That is such a... You know, when you told me about it yesterday, we were messaging about, like, what the fuck are we going to talk about on this podcast today? You told me about Star Fox 2. For one, I went, wait, I didn't even know that Star Fox wasn't originally on... Like, I thought Star Fox, and this is kind of betraying how much I know about Nintendo games, because I'm not, like,
You thought it started on the 64, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I did think it started out on the 64. But I don't know a lot about Nintendo games. So then I went and I googled the Star Fox 2 story, and I'm just like, what the fuck? That's so scumbaggy, Nintendo! Holy shit!
It was done. It was done, and... ready to go.
Like, put it to print and send it off and make your money.
And then, nope, they canceled it because the 64 was coming out and they wanted a clean break between the Super Nintendo and the N64.
Wow. That's so scumbaggy.
It's just so... Because that game exists somewhere.
I know. Why not? It's been 30 fucking years or however long it's been. Put it out. Stick it on the Nintendo
put it on the
eShop.
Virtual Console.
Yeah, do it. Just sell it and let fucking people play it. I mean, like,
do you know how crazy that would be if Nintendo just came out and they're like, yeah, we've had this game in storage for 20 some odd years. We're releasing Star Fox 2 on the Switch.
It's so insane to me, like, that it hasn't happened yet, you know? Like, especially because, again, like, when I was reading about Star Fox 2 and kind of, like, its features and stuff like that, I was like, oh, this sounds like Star Fox 64. And then I read a little bit further, and I went, oh, that's because Star Fox 64 lifted, like, 30% of its code from Star Fox 2, and then Nintendo didn't pay the fucking developers for it.
I know.
That is, like, the scumbaggiest thing I've ever... I mean, maybe even more so than the Hussey situation. What happened to the Star Fox 2 devs might actually be worse, because their game never came out and they got robbed. Like, yeah. And they spent all that time on it, which is even worse.
Like, and reading it, like, they said, like, you get this idea that, like, they weren't mad about the game getting canceled to make a clean break for the 64. Like, they kind of imply, like, they understood that principle of it, because it's a shift to a whole new, you know, thing. It's not just like a graphical upgrade. It's a whole new shift to a completely different style of development.
Yeah.
So you want to make a big deal out of it, but, like, it seemed they were mostly more mad about not getting the credit and the pay for the work they harvested for Star Fox 64.
Yeah, fucking right. They should be mad. That's infuriating to hear about. That like Nintendo took, like, according to one developer, approximately 30% of Star Fox 2 is, and that's a pretty significant little chunk of a game.
Yeah.
Is in Star Fox 64, and they never got the credit for it, and they never got their money for it, and Nintendo just kind of swept it under the rug, and I didn't even know about it until you told me about it.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane to me.
It's crazy.
And then Nintendo had the balls to put out a bunch of really shitty Star Fox games after that. I don't
There hasn't been a good Star Fox game since Star Fox 64 3D on the 3DS.
And that's just a remake of the original Star Fox 64.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that Nintendo's got the balls to put out a really bunch of really terrible furry bait games after they put out Star Fox 64, and they kind of shat all over the Star Fox 2 devs is pretty fucking egregious. That's pretty fucked up, guys. So, like, whatever, that's fine.
Further speaking of bullshit, do you know about a little game called 1313?
Wait, what?
1313 was...
Okay, I know the name, but refresh my memory.
It is the canceled Star Wars game.
Oh fuck!
That was going to be about Boba Fett.
Are we talking about Battlefield 3, like the good Battlefield 3, or is 1313 something else?
1313 was a canceled game.
Okay.
That was going to star a younger Boba Fett.
No, okay, I didn't know about this. I did hear about the good version of Battlefield 3 that got canceled, and then we got the shitty version of Battlefield instead. Did you hear about that?
I heard about that, yes. But this was a game that started development in, when did it start?
Fucking forever ago.
It started, I think, in like 2012.
Okay.
And so it actually didn't have it didn't have a long development cycle, but it left enough of an impact that it's worth talking about.
Tell me more.
It was going to be a darker, more mature, grittier Star Wars game.
Right.
Heavy on the grit.
I'm cool with that though.
And it was going to star Boba Fett in his early adulthood, because if you swoosh 13 together, it looks like BB.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It wouldn't have any lightsabers or force mechanics. It was all going to be gadgets and weapons and blasters and stuff like that. There are gameplay footage trailers out that look super dope, and I'll link you to them after this.
Okay.
It's one of those things that like kind of came out of nowhere, and it's like not something. It's a complete departure from the norm of what you'd expect from like a Star Wars game,
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect them to take like a risk like that with this, and it when the Disney merger happened, it was one of the projects that kind of got the can because they wanted a clean slate to work with. And so it's this thing where like you have a ton of concept art, you have a lot of video and stuff of it, and it looked like it was going to be a grand slam, and then it just didn't happen.
That is some old-fashioned bullshit, and we were talking the other day. I have a lot of opinions about the Disney merger.
Yeah.
I have a lot of really strong... As much as I like The Force Awakens, I have a lot of really strong negative opinions about the Disney merger, and Disney's general power in...
we'll call it what it is. It's a growing monopoly on...
American pop culture? Yeah, they have a monopoly on American pop culture, basically.
Yeah.
They own Marvel, they own Star Wars, they have the Disney Princess line. That means that everything you can talk about for the next 10 years... belongs to Disney, and if that doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies, it should. And I think if I think about it too long, I actually get like really uncomfortable because like it's just like a really creepy, like it's something straight out of Blade Runner. It's like it's something right out of a fucking like dystopia to have all of your media distributed to you by one company. And then, by the way, Disney owns ESPN. So they even have a stranglehold on sports and shit like that. And they own CBS, which means they own a major cable network.
It's one of those weird things where, like, now, I mean, I like to give a lot of people, like, pretty much everyone the benefit of the doubt in this. Is like, Disney hasn't done anything, like, shady with all of these, but they're growing so powerful that it could happen at any moment, and that's what makes it really unsettling.
That's what makes it so unsettling, and it's just kind of like everything you talk about. If you talk about Marvel, you know, on the Twitter, you talk about Marvel a lot, you know?
Yeah.
Well, that's free advertisement for Disney.
Hey, Task, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah.
I can't wait to talk to you more about cool superheroes.
Hey, buddy. But that's free advertisement for Disney. If you want to talk about... Yeah,
exactly.
If you want to talk about how cool... I mean, you know, everything you talk about ultimately goes back to the mouse.
Pretty much every movie that I'm excited about seeing for the next, like, 3 years.
We talk about Kingdom Hearts, and that's Disney. I mean, so they even have their fingers in Square Enix. It's kind of crazy.
Like, I'm looking around my room right now, and I'm like, oh, yeah, there's some Spider-Man posters. There's I have a bunch of Disney Infinity figurines. Like, oh, no, it's literally everywhere. I have...
It's kind of... I mean, it honestly does kind of give me the creeps. And because it also, you know, they are very risk averse, which is why, as good as The Force Awakens is, it's also very safe. And I mean, to me, that just makes me nervous. And it's why something like 13... Yeah. It's why 1313 and the good Battlefield 3 doesn't exist anymore. Because, boy, you want to talk about Star Wars games not existing that I'm fucking salty about. Let's talk about Battlefield 3. Because I actually did... Because I actually did play Battlefield 2, and I fucking love Battlefield 2, okay? Because it's a good fucking game. And it has a lot of maps, it's got a lot of different playable characters. It has, like, twice as many maps as the Battlefield 3 we got from EA, and EA can eat my hairy ass.
Talk about, just a complete letdown in regards to a video game in this modern era.
Oh, I know. And then if you hear about the original plot for one, Battlefield 3 Battlefield 3 was originally supposed to have like a plot. It was an alternate universe Star Wars where Obi-Wan Kenobi was a Sith Lord.
Which is like
awesome.
Dude, yeah, I'll
yeah, like the concept art is so cool and the ideas are just cool and it's just
it's one of those things where like I really wish that, like, this is something I think about a lot, where, like, I wish games were more willing to release, like, reimaginings. Like, I point at, like, Case West, or, or in this case, Battlefield 3. Like, make games that are just straight up what-ifs.
Yeah! For sure, mate.
Like, if you're making a game based on, like, something else, like a sequel or a remake or something, or based on an existing franchise, dude, go all out and be like, what if this? And
what if
mix
Obi-Wan
it up, like,
Kenobi
a lot.
Was a fucking
like,
Sith Lord.
There was a game I didn't put on the list because there's literally nothing about it, but there was a game out that came out. I think I showed you guys in the group chat like a while ago. It was called Gotham by Gaslight.
Yeah.
And it was gonna be a 1800s alternate universe Batman game. Which is like
cool.
That's pretty cool. That's like, you know, instead of just being a standard Batman game, you're gonna mix it up and do something different with it. Like, yeah, awesome. Cool.
You have all of this cool technology at your disposal, and you're just using it to make another fucking Arkham City game? Fuck you.
Yeah.
You know? I don't care how good those games are. They all look the fucking same after a while. Like, why not do something different? But, you know, instead what we got, you know, EA shit-canned the good version of Battlefield 3. So instead we get a version of Battlefield 3 with, like, 7 maps, and...
They released a map expansion as a full game.
Oh, that's such bullshit. That makes me so mad.
It's straight up what they did.
That makes me so
mad.
There's
enough content in there for, like, a $20 DLC pack. It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
Honestly.
I mean, EA is the literal worst. And for a little while there, we all had, like, hopes that maybe EA was stopping, like, you know, being the worst. Because for like a little short period there, they had a bunch of unique games coming out. But now Mirror's Edge 2 is nowhere to be seen.
No, it's out.
It's out?
Catalyst came out, yeah.
Mirror Edge 2 came out?
Mirror's Edge Catalyst came out.
Is it any good?
I mean, if it's a suitable Mirror's Edge, but it's not groundbreaking.
That sucks. Well,
yeah.
Still, fuck EA is the point I'm trying to make. Their fucking Steam ripoff system sucks ass. And I mean, their games are just shitty and derivative again. And for like 5 minutes, everybody thought EA was not going to be the bad guys again. And we all got our, and that was stupid because EA is always the bad guy. Like, no matter what, always assume EA is the bad guy. EA and Activision, they're the bad guys, always. And they always will be. Sorry. So yeah, fuck that shit. Poor 1313 got...
1313 and Battlefield 3.
Star Wars deserves another good fucking game, because they just can't seem to catch a break. When are we gonna get another game as good as Knights of the Old Republic?
Never? Probably never.
That's such bullshit. I want another good fucking Star Wars RPG so badly that isn't an MMORPG. Fuck you, BioWare. I can't stand it. Like, where is that game? Like, there's a market for it. There's a huge market for it. People want to make their own fucking character that isn't an MMORPG because MMORPG is the worst. Because people are the worst. Like, where's my game where I can choose to be a Jedi or not? We're there.
Yeah.
It's if Fallout 4 can work and not be like amazing, you can make a good fucking Star Wars game that's open world-ish. Come on.
Yeah,
I'm dying here.
One of these things where like it's kind of the same problem I have. Well, fuck it. Speaking of Marvel, we're like, dude, where was the Avengers game?
Right?
Like you have these colossal Star Wars is back, okay?
Yeah.
Like, it's straight up, like, there's everything for Star Wars now. It's back to the Revenge of the Sith levels of merchandising.
But worse, because Disney.
Yeah. Spaceballs the musical. Spaceballs the backpack. Spaceballs the flamethrower. Merchandising. Like, why are you... And not that I want them, but why aren't you pumping out crappy Star Wars game after crappy Star Wars game?
And hoping something sticks. Like, where the fuck is my Star Wars open world game?
Yeah.
Like, that's all I want to know. Because the company that makes that game and makes it... like half it doesn't even have to be as good as Knights of the Old Republic. If it's half as good, if it's as good as like Fallout 4, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it would sell. Oh my god, God himself would probably come down from heaven and be like, yeah, can I get a copy of this new Star Wars game? You know what I mean? Like, it's level of thing where, like, desired.
Exactly, and it's the same thing with Marvel, where it's like, Marvel has finally teamed up with Square Enix to make Avengers games.
After the hype has kind of faded.
You're about 10 years late for that party.
Right? Like, most people are kind of not that, like, super hype about the Avengers anymore because Age of Ultron was so meh, you know?
Yeah, and they're getting a little, like, burnt out on superhero movies now. And now you're putting out the games? Like, what? I mean, don't get me wrong, the idea of a JRPG with superheroes is something I have had on the brain since I was like 5.
Yeah, like, because My Hero Academia, I can do an anime about superheroes. Why can't we get a JRPG about superheroes?
Like, straight up, like, I actually talked about this with Task very briefly, but I've been thinking about it for weeks now. Like, dude, why isn't the X-Men not a JRPG?
Oh, right.
You have fighters, healers, rogues, like,
rogues.
Yeah, you have Rogue to be a rogue, or, Gambit to be a rogue. Rogue is a red mage.
Right?
Or she's a blue mage. Rogue's a blue mage, for God's sake.
I know.
Wolverine is your fighter. Like,
I know.
You can have an archer, you can have Cyclops be your projectile fighter. Like,
Storm is your
black mage. Like, and you have a bunch of villains you can have as your bosses, and you just send them on, like, a crazy adventure through the whole planet. You have You can send them to the Savage Lands. You can send them to Meteor M. You can send them wherever.
You wanna know why they don't do it?
Why?
Because it would take 12 years to develop.
Yeah, there you go.
That's why.
Well, it's not like Marvel's going anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Not with all the money.
But still, like, you know, you're just now getting around to making like games.
Like, where the fuck have you been? Like, where the fuck have you been?
Okay, so yeah, Iron Man and Thor and Captain America got crappy Wii PS2 era or PS3 era games, but like, you know, like, those were like just so minor. Like, where was the game where you're throwing all your money in for the Avengers or for like the Guardians or whatever?
Right.
You know,
like, where are those games? Like, I hate movie tie-in games, but you guys have so much money, you could probably make a good one.
It's just weird that they haven't done that yet. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the idea of the Deus Ex staff working on a Marvel game is really hype. Oh my god, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That's
a good combination.
If the punching is half as satisfying as it is in Deus Ex, then we're good. You know what I mean? Like, just the punchy bits of Deus Ex are so good.
It's like, wait a minute, you're getting the Tomb Raider staff to work on a Guardians game? Oh, that's real good!
That's so fucking good! Oh my god.
Alright, I have one. This is the last one I want to talk about. Is like, it's not exactly the big flash, like the big cultural disaster like some of these other games were. But it's one that punches me straight in the gut every time I think about it, and I have it on Wallpaper Cycler, and I get mad and sad every time I see it.
Ooh, I think I know which one this is.
Oh, Faith in a 45 got canceled.
I know. I knew it.
I'm so mad.
I know.
Every so often, I'll just like thumb through the concept art, like a widow waiting for her husband to come home from war.
When will my Faith in a 45 return from the home front? Like, oh, it's so sad.
This is a game that it was a post-apocalyptic New Orleans, like, 1930s mobster aesthetic.
New Orleans.
With, like, a great, like, looking cast, like Louisiana or whatever, like...
No, I'm just laughing at the way you say New Orleans. It's okay.
Oh. I'm from the Midwest,
You're
okay?
from fucking Michigan. I know. You can't...
Did you want me to say Nolans?
No, just New Orleans.
No. Well, yeah. They're crayons.
Crayons.
It's called a door wall.
A what?
A door wall.
What's a door wall?
A sliding glass door.
It's a sliding glass door. What the fuck is a door?
No, it's a door
Get
wall.
Get the fuck out of here. It's Coke, too, motherfucker. Not Pop. Get the fuck out of here. How's that sound? You know, if you'd played, and if Faith in a fucking 45 had come out, everybody around had been calling it fucking Coke, too, and sliding glass doors.
But no, like, this is a game that, like...
Hit all the right, like, spots.
Exactly, like, this is exactly the kind of game that, like, appealed to me exactly. The character concepts looked fucking stellar.
Mm-hmm.
The gameplay, from what we just saw from that quick beta trailer, looked like a ton of fun, and it was a little rough around the edges, but, like, it was a beta trailer, and you expected the natural growth to make it look like a satisfying game. And just all the concept behind it and the team behind it had some pretty solid titles, you know, under their belt, and it's just... It didn't like make a huge splash, and like not everyone was like super upset about it, but like
you were.
Not only did it get canceled, but the studio went under too. So there's literally no chance it'll ever come out.
That's so sad. That's the worst, is when like a game bankrupts the studio working on it, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, that is.
And I'm looking at screenshots and concept art now, and I'm just like, oh man,
we could have had it all.
There's cool, like, military cop guys using riot shields and Tommy guns, and, like, there's a straight-up KKK villain.
I'm just thinking of the penny whistle solo from Of My Heart Will Go On.
That's exactly it. And it's like...
Yeah.
Oh,
I know.
I'm so, like, mad about Faith in a 45 getting canceled.
I know.
Oh, man.
I mean, I am pretty,
so
you know, it's kind of funny that, like, my conversations on this podcast go back to Fable so much. But I really do like Fable just as, like, a thing. But, like, you know, Fable Legends was not going to be good, but it looked pretty, and it had great concept art. And if you read the Lionsgate, that big expose about, like, why Lionsgate died, it's one, because Microsoft is the literal worst company ever and has no idea what they're doing. See Scalebound.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally have no idea
that
what
was
they're
one
doing.
we could have talked about, but, like...
Oh my god. It's still a fresh wound, okay, buddy?
Ah, poor Camilla, man. Poor Camilla.
Doesn't deserve it. But, like, you know, a lot of things you see from, like... So, like, one of the things I was reading in that big story about Lionsgate after Molyneux left was that they had all of this cool technology assembled and all this really amazing concept art for Legends put together, and Legends was basically supposed to be kind of like a MOBA, like a Defense of the Agents or League of Legends kind of game.
Yeah.
Which is bullshit, by the way.
Yeah, that's dumb.
It's stupid. But basically, while people were working on it, you know, they were all saying, they had all this cool concept art, they had all these great ideas, and literally everybody working on it was going, why aren't we making Fable 4? You know? Like, why aren't we making a real Fable game with all of this cool asset work, all of these cool concept designs, and the fact that the game itself, everything you see of it, I mean, it looks pretty as shit. Yeah, fuck yeah, it looks good. But it's like everybody's going like, why aren't we working on Fable 4? And the question is, yeah, why the fuck weren't you working on Fable 4? Because I still have faith in Fable, god damn it. Even if 3 was a huge disappointment. Like, Fable is my video game comfort food, and now that we'll never get Fable 4, it's kind of like, that's like my faith in a 45. It's like,
yeah.
Like, it'll just never happen. You know, it's just one of those things, it's like, it's so your thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just...
And I don't know if this makes it better or worse. I didn't find out about Faith in a 45 until after it got canceled.
Oh, that might make it worse.
Because, like, for one thing, I don't have the crushing disappointment of, like, oh boy, oh no, it's gone.
Oh, yeah.
But now I have to come into everything brand new and be like, this is never going to happen.
Yeah, that's kind of sad.
Keep that in mind while you look at all this cool concept art of these two main characters. Like, they'll never be in anything.
Yeah, that is pretty sad. I don't know. I think that might be more sad than the crushing disappointment of, like, knowing the game and having it being canceled. It's probably worse.
Better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all.
Exactly. You know, it's so sad. It's tragic. Yeah. Poor video games are hard, man. Video games break your heart.
Sometimes video games don't happen, and then you get sad, and it's a life lesson you learn.
And the lesson should be, why do I do this to myself? And then you just play more video games, of course.
Yeah, the ones that do come out. The ones that do make it back.
The ones that do come back from war. You know, you're like the widow standing on a dock, watching all these other soldiers come back, and you're like, where's my husband? And of course he's not fucking there. It's so tragic, man. It's just like, But, you know, it's just fucking video games. I guess that's the point of all of this, really, is, man, fucking video games and fuck delays. Yeah. And ultimately, the funny thing is, we were talking about this today, I'm really not that salty about P5.
No, really, not really, because it gave you more of a chance to play Berseria.
Which is really the most important thing in my life right now.
Yeah.
Like... I'm really not. Like, even when they first announced it, I was like, oh, that kind of sucks, and then I thought about it, and, like, I was like, oh, I get an extra month and a half to play my favorite RPG series. Okay, cool. Neat.
Yeah, alright, that's not so bad.
That's not so bad. But it is a good excuse to be salty about all these other games that were delayed or had such strange development cycles. Hey, Square Enix, you really should put out a crazy documentary about the development of 15, please. Oh my god, it'd be crazy.
Now to kind of round everything up and just kind of wrap it up before I go into the closing spiel. Mm-hmm. Every time a game gets delayed for whatever reason, you know, don't immediately despair, because I whenever it happens, like whenever a game gets delayed for whatever reason, like my first thought is, oh damn, that sucks. And then my second thought is I always come back to Miyamoto and his quote where he says, a delayed game is eventually good.
Right.
A bad game is bad forever.
Is bad forever. My closing thought is this. So when Half-Life 3 does eventually come out, do you think it'll cure cancer?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
It's not even Valve can make Half-Life 3 as good as we want it to be.
It's never coming out. I mean, at this point, Gabe Newell's fat ass is just merged with its chair. So it's no.
They're gonna be making TF2 money forever, they don't need to worry about anything else.
They're just making sweet green off of Steam sales. Yeah. That's pretty much it.
Yep.
So
that's all they need.
That's all they need, you motherfuckers. Oh well, that's really like the ultimate tragedy of like the game, of all of them, the holy shining grail of like video game tragedies really is Half-Life 3.
Oh yeah.
Because Half-Life 3 or 2 and 2.1 and 2.2 were good fucking games. Like, I replayed Half-Life 2 a few years ago, and I'm like, man, this game still holds up really, really well. You know? Like, it's still pretty fucking solid. And, it'll never get closure. I think that's the worst. I think that might be the worst of all of them, is never getting closure. Because all of these other games we've talked about have been their own thing. You know? Like, sure, StarCraft Ghost never happened, and sure, we'll never probably know the real story of Final Fantasy 15. And yeah, Faith in a 45 got canceled. Cool. All of these things happened, but, you know, you never were really too invested in the plot of Faith in a 45. At least 15 came out. You know, stuff like that. You know, StarCraft Ghost kind of got a weird conclusion by being canon in a way. But really, Half-Life 3 is the ultimate kind of tragedy, because you'll never have that closure, ever. Mm-hmm. You'll never know how it ends. Like, that's the worst, is having a series in stasis for eternity, you know? Nobody understands fans of A Song in Fire of Ice better than Half-Life fans. They might be the same kind of people, honestly. That is the greatest tragedy, and I think of all video games ever, that is probably the greatest tragedy of all, is that Half-Life 3 is never going to happen. Yeah. That's definitely...
Okay.
Yeah, right on.
I think, so thanks to Broke for Free, use for our background music, link to his work in the description. If you want to talk to us more about games that got canceled or are still stuck in development hell, you can email them to us at thegorgepodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet them to us at thegorgepodcast.
He'll mostly just talk to you about comic books if you tweet him. You should tweet at him about comic books, because it's literally all our partner is about anymore.
Listen, Task keeps posting a bunch of cool black superheroes, and they're all really cool. So I want to talk about them, because I want to be like, well, what series are they in? I want to read about these guys.
I don't read comics. I'm just like staring at our Twitter, like, how did this happen?
He posted one about a guy who's basically the Black Panther and the Punisher combined, and I'm like, yeah, that's really cool.
But I'm sitting here staring at our Twitter account, like, we're a video game you do know we're a video game podcast, right?
I know we're a video game podcast. Well, when video games happen some more, I'll post about them. Why don't you tweet about video games more? You want it so bad.
Because I'm too busy playing Tales of Berseria. Obviously. Okay, is that it?
Alright. I think that'll be it. Man, fuck delays.
Yeah, fuck delays. That is good. Yeah, fuck delays. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.